probably is not going to be able to make it. He was going to try to, but he's still taking care of his mother-in-law's doing great.
Oh, good.
But she doesn't trust a whole lot of people to help her, other than John. So he spent a lot of time over in rehab. Are you ready, Mr. Owen?
Anytime you all are.
Yeah.
Stephen, did you hear talk, Stephen? All right. I will call this February 26th session of the Planning Commission work session to order. Krista? Call
Miss
roll,
Jamie
please.
Rhodes,
Here.
Miss Bonnie Height,
Here.
Mr. Stephen Greenwood, Mr. John Reed, and Chairman Don Wagner.
Here. All right. What we have tonight is a work session, and thank you all for being here. We appreciate you. I got a whole bunch of stuff on here. Anybody got any comments before we get into this? In past sections of whatever. We did get a copy from John Reed on some changes he made, or he's recommended. Ron, what he sent, that's in the current ordinance? But
No, it's in the
But-
current draft.
It's in the draft, but it's not in
No.
what you changed, or what was changed by,
Right, this can,
what was given to the
yeah. Yeah, so basically, he and I met on this the other day. And to be honest, these were as much as anything talking points. He just wanted to make sure that this fit in with what the planning commission had in mind. He's got 2,000 feet of any pond streams, natural drainage swales. So again, I think it was more of a talking point if that's what the planning commissioners thought would be appropriate. I didn't look at it in great detail, I'll probably.
I like what it's written, I think it adds to. One thing I had a little bit of a problem with was the property owners complete CUP application, including a list of all property owners within 1 mile. I probably should have that, probably 3,000 feet.
And just from a technical standpoint, the 2,000 feet from ponds, streams, and natural drainage swales, under your floodplains, I don't think that's reasonable. But again, these are drafts. And
I was just going to ask, what are those requirements now? Is there a basis of comparison from what there currently exists to what he's proposing?
yeah,
I mean, are we
the
fine?
standard state and federal rules on general construction permitting and DEQ for stormwater management and erosion sediment control, and the Chesapeake Act all have buffer requirements.
Are
This
they-
far exceeds those buffer requirements.
So, but we're still putting together the draft solar panel ordinance based on the additional conditions, right?
Actually, most of those conditions are already in the draft,
Okay.
but I'll defer to Rebecca.
Okay.
I send her all those, and I know she put them in there.
Okay, so most of them, they've been incorporated.
Actually, it actually worked the other way. Took our draft solar and made those the conditions for this solar facility.
Oh, that's right, okay.
And going forward, I think it'll be much better.
Unless anybody's got any further at this time, maybe we can get started. We left off on page.
Well, and I think last time we were talking about the short-term rental Airbnb language for that? Do
Yeah.
you have language for that? at
Not
this
right now,
time?
I
Okay.
don't.
All right. Just want to make sure so that we.
Yeah, no, it's like one of those things I know I've got to
Yeah.
get to. I don't think it'll be an issue. My thought is utilizing a comparable standard ordinance language for a similarly situated locality.
Okay.
Okay, so we will start on page 164, Article 17, site plan requirements. Does anyone have any comments on that section?
I have a question. For the projects that require site plans, list the projects that require site plans. I don't have preference one way or the other, but I looked at Hanover, and Hanover requires site plans for all non-residential projects too. So I don't know if that's a reasonable thing, or there's a rationale why we don't include it for non-residential. There's some that are non-residential, public institutional buildings and facilities. I was just curious why we would
We require site plans for, let's see,
conditional use permits, applications for conditional zoning, multiple family and townhouse projects. So you've got residential, public and institutional buildings and facilities like churches. Any use within the TCO district, any use for which a site plan is required under the Chesapeake Bay and planned unit developments. So I was just curious, is it typical to require also, is it typical to require site plans for non-residential as well? So if a big commercial project
but
came in?
one thing in there is that site plans are required for the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area or overlay district, and the Chesapeake Bay overlay district encompasses the entire county.
Okay,
So any construction in the groundbreaking within Chesapeake Bay overlay district would require site plans.
so the Chesapeake
So
Bay
basically,
Preservation Overlay District covers the county.
Am I correct on that?
I do not think so.
Okay.
Or what, let's hear what you guys say.
Well, no, I'm going to defer to the planners. I got to sit right here.
So in other localities, you can do, for other non-residential structures, I think that's fine. There's also, you could say projects over a certain size. So, sometimes we use it more as an exclusion to say, anything less than 2,500 square feet.
Right, I don't want to make it problematic. I'm just wondering if we're requiring it for a multifamily dwelling and just a townhouse project, which may be a small project, why wouldn't we require it for a commercial strip mall that's going in?
And we can do that. That's
What, do you all have thoughts on that?
I absolutely think.
Okay. So, I think the first question is, it's not necessary if the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area encompasses all of King William, but if that's not the case,
Now,
I think we need to
Tell
check
me-
that,
tell
and
me, well,
yeah, if that's the case, then this entire this needs to be reworded differently, and it just
Because-
needs to say that the entire county requires, any
Yes.
construction in
Yes.
the county requires site plans. Because right now, as it's worded,
it makes it sound as if
Some are
it's an
not.
added level of verification that requires you and the developer to check. So we can look at that, and I would certainly suggest that you would want to have site plans for non-commercial, or commercial.
Yeah, okay, good.
At least over a certain size, and we have language from other district, or other localities that have taken
language
that
we could
approach.
suggest for, what types?
Maybe you all could provide some different options to the Planning Commission in terms of alternative
we'll do that.
And the other thing that I don't see required in here is subdivisions. What, does anything, I mean, what in here, in the way this is written now, requires that we have site plans for subdivisions?
Let me just, I want to make sure I'm understanding the question. Site plans, when they go to do construction, they have to submit site plans for any construction. Now, the subdivision part where we're just subdividing property and somebody comes in and says, I want to do a 25-acre subdivision, no matter what, there's no site plan required for that because that's just subdividing land. So I'm not sure if that's what you're asking.
What you're saying is, if it's
Single-family subdivision.
Any
property.
if we're
property
doing
subdivision.
rezoning and they're just rezoning,
If they're just rezoning,
but now we have said, previously, we've agreed that rezonings will require site plan.
yes.
In other words, we're saying we don't want any more speculative rezonings.
Well, I understand, yes, yeah, I know that's, but that isn't sounding like what you're saying about site plans
Well,
now.
now, I'm asking you where it says a site plan is required for subdivision.
It's not for a land subdivision.
For a subdivision development, residential subdivision development.
So multiple family dwelling and townhouse
That's not
projects is
sub-
different, that's right.
Yeah.
So what's required at the subdivision stage, and we'll get to it, are plans. They have to do a subdivision plan, and it has all these requirements that are different for the minor and then for the major. But for the single family, there is no requirement for a site plan, for instance, if you have single family homes. So let's say you have a major subdivision, and it's not a multifamily dwelling, you have a major subdivision, 100 lots, 100 homes, no site plan required under this, or under the subdivision plat is. Would you, or most jurisdictions, do they require site plans for major subdivisions of single-family projects? Or PUDs, planned unit development?
Well, you do have.
Plan is, okay, that's
It's
included.
listed.
Yeah, Krista.
I just wanted to throw out there, we do require site plans for all of those subdivision developments, the larger ones. We do require those, and I guess what they're trying to say is this section right here kind of leaves it open-ended to say that there's some things that don't require a site plan. So this section, it really doesn't apply because most things, pretty much everything does require a site plan through our department.
One way that I've seen this done differently is to specifically articulate those items that are exempt from the site plan review process, rather than
Yes,
than
that seems like a better
articulating
approach.
everything that it is.
Why don't we identify what's currently exempt, and we've already identified a couple just in this discussion. One of which would be commercial, which I think we would like to have options on how to address that. And then, I don't know how the other commissioners feel about having single-family major subdivisions requiring a site plan. The site plan shows the building within the lot lines essentially, right? Utility easements, anything, would a site plan be anything different than a subdivision plan?
I mean, it would be able to potentially, like through the through the site plan process, serve as your zoning approval as well. So the zoning, it becomes your zoning permit and your site plan essentially, is that correct? Is that the way that you do it here? So those two sections, because we have another section on zoning permits, need to be consistent. And we also want to make sure that we are being, so one of my questions then, I'm sorry, is if we're exempting, say I've seen it exempted based on a certain size of development. So typically your stormwater requirements are gonna kick in at 2,500 square feet. And so you could potentially, even in a single, like, if you're building an accessory structure on a residential lot that's already subdivided, you might want to kick in the site plan requirements, but that might be going too far.
We already
And leave
have.
it up to you.
Even for accessory developments
Okay,
and for additions, they still have to, because we can't do the lot lines and setback requirements without
exactly,
the site plan. So
exactly.
That's one reason you certainly want a site plan.
Yes.
To be able to do that. And
So
I'm
that-
just- What I'm driving at, it's not specific.
No,
And that's what we need
Yeah.
to do, is get something specific so that we all know what we're working with.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, since Mr. Brady joined us late, could we go back to his comments on the solar? Well, one thing I noted on that, John, is the 2,000-foot buffer zone, I feel is unreasonable.
If I may, so a lot of citizens had a lot of concerns about the proximity to the wetlands. And so I threw this out as a, what do you think? I'm fine with making it further or closer, depending upon what the commission and ultimately the board of supervisors wants to do. So again, I have absolutely nothing vested in any of the percentages and distances. It's whatever the commission as a whole would like to see. I'd be fine with 10 feet, I'd be fine with 10 miles. I'd be fine with the 50% slope, I'd be fine with the 5% slope, whatever the commission would like to see. Because again, a lot of citizens and some of the planning commissioners had concerns about the slope and the distance to the wetlands. So I'm going to throw this out as a, what do y'all think?
Well, as you might well imagine, I like it. The only thing I had a question, concern about was the 1 mile of property lines. I think that ought to be cut back to maybe.
Oh, well, with that one, so, and something else, you all sent letters out, how far out? The second
The
one?
requirement is adjacent,
Right, right.
and then we extended that radius basically.
We didn't have a footage requirement, we kind of capped it at 500.
We kept the number of letters we were going to send out.
Oh,
Gotcha,
So
so
we
you
tried
got
to
a
get
requirement in
everybody-
there.
right, and the requirement's
In
only
the
adjacent.
whole perimeter that we could.
But is it worth, if you all wanted to extend it further out rather than 500, why not have the applicant identify however many there are within whatever distance you want to do it, whether it's a quarter mile or a mile or whatever?
Step one, we wouldn't trust the applicants because, well, we've learned a lesson.
It'd be a good first step, though.
Well, we didn't even use the applicants that time, that was still us, but that also teaches me that I'm like more, I want the applicant to give it, we look at it. If I do a mile, putting that kind of perimeter on it, I'll have to give it some.
Again, I have no strong feelings about that either,
But we didn't go out anywhere close to a mile, and we sent out 500 letters.
Okay.
And I'm more of a practical person, that's a lot of trees, letter stuffing, and postage. And it was nowhere close to a mile radius.
Yeah, I don't have any strong feelings about that, but again, as far as the slope and the distance, I think it is unfair to developers not to tell them where we have concerns, because they'll think it's okay to come within 50 feet of whatever and the slope of whatever. And I think it's incumbent upon us to tell them what they can't do. And then they can look at it, go, the property that they're looking at meets the ordinance, and they shouldn't have any problem, or, oh, I see this property does not meet the ordinance, and therefore they may still go for the conditional use permit and explain why that should be accepted, but they won't be expending money unnecessarily when we've already told them up front we have that concern.
So I agree with the concept of certainly letting the developers know, and I like the idea of having strong setback requirements and slope requirements, because that was a concern for everybody. I just don't have a basis for comparison.
And this is purely speculative on my part, so I
Was
would
there
prefer.
anything in the draft ordinance that referenced the distance?
I don't think so, no.
No, there isn't.
Okay.
It was just the near the adjacent properties.
Right. And the only other change I had, so again, the amounts, I have no vested interest, let me repeat again, I have no vested interest in what I've come up with, more or less, talking a longer distance, whatever. I do feel very, very strongly, however, about the, only having commercial, only having major solar farms of 21 megawatts or more. We have right now in Hollyfield 10, I believe.
17 in Hollyfield 1, 13 in Hollyfield 2.
So they would have a total of 30, for which we would get zero machinery and equipment tax.
No, we are not getting.
Right, right, so for which we'll have nothing. So they've got a 31 megawatt facility basically, even though the second developer may end up developing it. The original owners were planning on having two totaling 31 megawatts, for which the county gets no machinery and equipment tax revenue. So I'm fine with 21 megawatts or larger.
Let's set this aside for now.
Okay.
Because there's some changes I'm going to
I
make.
will.
All right, well, again, I wasn't full permission to
I
have
will be
that.
appointing a committee later
Okay.
to look at this, so one or two members of this board, planning commission, and some citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so
So
as
we're
far
gonna
as
do a
the,
list of exemptions on the others, right? Sorry, just wanna make sure we're, okay.
okay, so we'll be looking to see what we might want to exempt from that.
If you have any specific recommendations at this point, let us know, otherwise we'll work with Ron to identify those exemptions. Is that fine?
I don't have any exemptions for site plan.
Defer to staff,
So site
it's
plan
more of an administrative, but we
review.
do want to make sure we get it right.
I'm pretty much in that. Before we approve anything, like Mr. Rick said, if you've got a lot, you've got to have property lines, you've got to have the property lines to know the setbacks. So I can't see how we can not have something.
Right.
The next area in site plan reviews, number 2 in that plan to require action by the planning commission. What I would like to do, have some discussion on at this time, would be applications within the TCO. And I think it's important that those properties within Hastings. Mr. Chair. Just to bring you up to snuff, we're looking at Article 17, site plan requirements. We just had a discussion on what projects require site plans, and we had quite a discussion on that. It's my opinion in any construction should have a site plan, and I don't see how we can approve a plan without a site plan. So the next thing we're looking at now, under 86-367, that's on page 164, reviews, and what I am recommending is that any application within the TCO be submitted to the planning commission for review and for public hearing. And one of the real reasons I think for that is, anytime we're doing new construction, we got neighbors. And I just ran into this many times working with our public hearings that you had a road going in, you had a service station going in, really bother people. And if we don't give them the opportunity to vent their frustrations with things, then I think it's not good. Sometimes we might make a change because of it, sometimes we won't. But at least we ought to hear what they've got to say, be able to review it, and then we come up with a decision whether to allow or not to allow.
This is for
If we don't do that, I don't
subdivisions?
think
Can you, is it particular uses that you are interested in hearing, or is it,
any
with the-
construction.
okay,
And the pushback from that, of course, is that the TCO in our current comp plan and in our future comp plan will be for commercial development. The area will be zoned appropriately for whatever construction that they submit. By taking it and saying that everything in the TCO has to go to public hearing, that makes it every use in that zoning conditional use, not by right.
right.
And it's just technically, we just can't do it. I really can't do
Is
it.
a subdivision conditional
Hmm?
use? Is a subdivision a conditional use?
That's a type of land, division of land. Subdivision is the division of land.
Not-
It's not a use.
Residential.
If you're talking about building a major subdivision, it's conditional use permit. You'd have to get it zoned R1. Well, if it's already zoned R1, no, it's by right, you can do it.
Not likely we're gonna have anything that's already on R1.
Yeah, but if,
Unless it's a subdivision that's already in place, because our rezoning takes in the boundaries of the proposed
and
subdivision.
for the most part, the TCO, you're not going to have R1. You're not going to have a major residential subdivision going in
Like you,
the TCO.
the only thing, actually, one of the things I was considering was exempt anything on existing building lots, existing approved building lots for a residence. Because they can still build a residence if it's previously approved subdivision.
But anything in the TCO that is permitted in that zoning, having a public hearing on that makes it a conditional use. And we would have, the whole point of the zoning is so people can build there without, we've already had the public hearing, if it has to be rezoned, it has to be a public hearing anyway. But if it's already zoned commercial and they're in the TCO, if we require a public hearing to approve a site, if the site plan has to be approved by the Planning Commission Board of Supervisors, then we need to pull all commercial uses out of the permitted use by right and make it conditional use permit for everything in the TCO. That is the only mechanism that is, correct me if I've got.
Yeah, I think it's two separate discussions, and Rebecca, feel free to chime in too, but site plan is a separate process than what you're talking about, at least in my experience and my understanding of that process. You can have, there's the rezoning process where you're changing land from one zone to another. That's a public hearing process, that's what we've talked through. So is that the concern, or are you talking about land that's already zoned?
I'm talking about land that's already zoned. That's
Well, and I'll give you some back.
where we issue a construction permit to allow construction.
He and I discussed this before, and I'll give you the great example he gave me, which I understood completely. We have a whole section of the TCO that's B2. And B2, by right, you can have mini storage. So there we have a project that, for mini storage, it's right in front of a brand-new major residential subdivision. And of course, it's B2, they're building mini storage, there's no public hearing, they had to submit site plans and all, and we reviewed them administratively. Mr. Wagner feels that the residents of that subdivision should have had an opportunity, there should have been a public hearing for that construction, because people might have issues, and they should know what's happening in front of them, and of course, a lot of the neighbors called me, so I knew where he's coming from, but and this is where I'm coming back to, if it goes to public hearing, my problem is if we give them a chance to vent and we can't tell them how we're gonna rectify it.
Planning commission is required to accept the site plan if it meets all of the requirements of state code. So having a public hearing at that time is basically a public process that
It doesn't do anything.
it doesn't do anything. It gives them a chance to vent, but then it becomes an
Because they're already
exercise in
permitted.
frustration.
Because they're already permitted
We can't
under
do
the
anything about it.
zoning to.
They're
for those
already
uses.
permitted.
So
So
I
that's
would
where,
say that's where you want to make sure the uses that you are saying are by right. You want to really vet those and consider, could there be issues? Should this be conditional? Or are there things that we want to have design standards for and specifics for that, if we had specifics for this type of use, we would be happy and comfortable, and we think residents around it would be happy and comfortable.
the other way that you can approach that, or in addition to the regulation of use, is additional buffer,
That's
landscaping
where I was going,
buffers
is a
in
buffer
between business and
Right.
residential uses. So that's another, we gave you a really lean landscaping ordinance, but that might be one thing
Yes.
that we
Well,
wanna really hone in on.
If I made the existing ordinance, I thought I already had, again, I've been
You
out
did
of touch
have-
for the last 2 months, and I
Well-
apologize, but there was a fair amount of buffering between residential and commercial in the old ordinance.
And I'll go back to Mr. Wagner's concern. Even if we put in a massive landscaping buffer requirement, it wouldn't address the issue for Mr. Wagner and others, because this particular mini storage is a really good example. They're gonna put in a bunch of landscaping buffer, but they completely clear lot it. You're permitted to do that, it's part of construction, then you come up, and the concern that you expressed to me was, and you weren't the only one, a couple people that live over here, they took all the trees out. There's no way we can, again, I know what the concern is, but we're hamstrung.
Other than going back to the use table, right?
Then
If
we
we go
can-
back to the use table for mini storage and change it to conditional use permit,
Then that
then it
would,
would have to go through that process.
But there could be
Yeah.
different development that would have the same result.
Right,
Right.
but
no,
again,
the
It's
construction
stronger
aspect of it.
That would be the other,
What's
that's
that?
the stronger landscaping.
Okay,
So,
right, but
That
it
won't
sounds
solve the
like
problem.
that's not gonna solve the problem. What may solve
The
the
problem is
problem.
construction activity. He feels, as we talk, that the neighbors need to know. Well, the greatest landscaping buffer in the world is not going to do anything when they're doing construction activities, because they're going to come clear their lot to build. And then they're going to put in their landscaping.
potentially.
And so the concern was, as Mr. Wagner expressed to me, that these people should know ahead of time that they are going to be doing this on that piece of
The
property.
concern
You said
was,
potential.
the real concern was, they had a buffer of trees,
They did, they took them all out.
and they took all the trees out.
So you could, in your landscaping ordinance, write something in to credit existing trees. That would be an incentive to a developer not to fully clear cut the lot.
But
Does
it's
it
only
always work?
incentive.
I mean, it's the carrot and the stick. So you can,
We can't require them to leave that there. I mean, we try to get them to, we've done it all.
Right, the ordinance could require them to leave a buffer of trees.
If they exist, but it's hard to write an ordinance, because for every site we have to be consistent across all sites, and not all sites are gonna have a buffer of trees.
So really, is it the TCO or and it's really the TCO because that's where the commercial is, where you've got the residential backing up.
Yeah, the majority of what we're gonna have is in the TCO. You are gonna have instances where you're gonna have lots that were platted prior to the TCO,
Okay.
that they can still build on.
But, right,
And Kelly's right, as far as we can put language in there to encourage, it's kind of like the language we use, we encourage the use of native plants, non-invasive species. We encourage the leaving of existing buffers. But I will point out, that's exactly what the Department of Forestry does for every one of these cutovers and, yeah.
I mean, right now, your buffer standards are very minimal. It's one deciduous tree and one shrub every 40 feet. That's
That is
not
so
really a
minimal,
buffer.
it's just ridiculous.
Um,
If you're talking about that particular buffer between the back of that property, does that apply to the back of the property?
Yeah, that's front and side.
Okay, what do we require on the back of that?
It depends on what it's backed up to. I don't remember all of it, but it's minimal. I mean, our landscaping, for the commercial part, if you look at the TCO, we have, like I think you just said, deciduous.
This is just
Or
generally,
general.
this is for where any commercially zoned development abuts a residential zoning
that's-
district.
I would say yes.
So,
Don't we have that same concern with any commercial hitting a residential
Yeah.
regardless of where it is?
and I think that's how you treat it consistently without having to add this additional layer of,
Well, I think we would want it regardless.
right.
We would want it regardless. There may be other concerns that you could address through the uses, but regardless of what the use is, that concern is going to be for any commercial use, regardless of what it is backing up to the residential. A buffer's one way
And
to
I
address
thought we had a strong
it. Yeah,
ruling
commercial
on
or industrial.
backing up the commercial property, or backing up the residential property.
And we've got bigger setbacks and all that as far as the landscaping buffer, if I'm remembering.
Can we bulk it on that?
Yeah,
I
so,
thought-
Yes.
We can propose some language
We can-
to increase that.
That'd be great.
That's what that's what I would like to see,
Okay.
to particularly, particularly in residential subdivisions, or adjacent to residential. I would certainly want to
And we
see-
have different standards depending on what they're backed up to. We just strengthen the ones. If you're adjacent to an R1, you've got to meet certain things. If you're adjacent to AC, we've got some stuff. So we
Is
take.
that the one that just, like you were talking about, next to that, Kennington has that $1 million homes, and then they built those townhomes, and we had the buffers that had to be on that street. How did we add those to be so strict? And that wasn't even commercial, between a residential and a residential.
That was in their conditional use permit when they first gave the master development for that subdivision, residential subdivision. And you start throwing that in there whenever I say the word subdivision.
Since this storage facility had already applied before.
Well, and they're still got to meet the TCO requirements for screening and for all of that stuff.
But
We don't have a lot of
what I would
screening.
like to see is any place we have commercial development, the one next to.
Or industrial.
Or
Or
industrial.
industrial.
We have a strong screen.
So it would be industrial too.
yeah, let me ask this. Would there be, so we can strengthen the buffer standards. Do you envision those to be only landscaping? We can write it in such a way that it would be opaque buffering and
When you say opaque buffer, you mean that's.
Green line.
you
fence.
could, so I've seen where you could require a fence and landscaping. You could require just a fence. I know that that's not what we're hearing tonight, that's not what I'm proposing.
And
But
TCO
it-
has some of that language already.
Already,
And
okay.
What I have
Already.
always seen used in cases like that is a double line of evergreen trees, not
Mhm.
deciduous, but a double line of trees staggered every 6
Yeah.
feet.
And it may be, depending on the use, you would want a type of fencing, but that would be use driven.
That could be based on the conditional use
We
permit.
do have a requirement for fencing around.
HVAC system.
Yeah,
Makes
including.
sense.
Well, actually, the TCO, they can't be visible. and
Right.
We've got a lot of rules as far as we just went through Tractor Supply.
But
A lot of rules on the screening and stuff that are
Yeah.
found in the TCO.
put something together
Mhm.
for a strong buffer situation.
So your current buffer is 25 feet. I'm assuming that that's what you have right now. I will say that's pretty consistent across the board with what I've seen, Rebecca. I don't know it's still close, 25 feet is close, but that's pretty, it's pretty typical.
And that's just the setback, that's not the landscaping buffer, that's the setback from the property. In other words, you can't put structures. in it.
The problem you always got with these things is that when you put the fences, put the evergreen trees in, you require 6 foot evergreen trees. It'd take 10 years.
Right.
But
Better than.
I don't think we require 20,
How much that would be.
$1,500. Had a pipeline, in which we had replaced mature trees with mature trees.
But you know, we've got, how far does a TCO go?
750 feet off of 360 and 500 feet off of 30 on each side.
and it's all dirty and all.
All of 30, all of 50.
Because there's a lot of opportunity, so this is very timely to get it in place.
Can we put some language in that has to be upkept like we did with the solar farms? Because I've noticed a lot of these businesses that we've seen that are already in existence, the trees have died and they haven't done anything about it.
Well, I believe,
Have language for
We already.
maintenance.
That's in there.
Oh, but since we're, like you said, since it's not brought to your attention, we can't do it because we're a complaint-based department.
I only work on complaints.
Yeah, I was wondering if we had some in there because.
We, in a new one.
Dead trees. Oh, right.
But I think
Check and see.
the ordinance, or the old ordinance anyway, said if you or your staff ride by,
Actually sees it, right?
Mr. Eder, did you mention replacing mature trees with mature trees?
I worked at a site where a pipeline burst in a fancy neighborhood in Rico. And they had to replace, part of the corrective action plan was the trees had to be replaced as kind.
Well, that would take care of the problem of cutting down nice tall trees because it's convenient to replace them with short trees that take 10 years to grow. There'd be an added incentive to keep those taller trees.
Oh, yeah, there's an incentive to keep taller trees like we were talking
In
about.
the buffer areas, in the buffer anyway.
But it's an incentive. I mean, it's not something
Right.
we can force, but yet
So they
the
can cut
mature
down-
trees are, to get a full-grown tree is,
So they can cut down mature trees, they just have to replace them with mature trees, or they can leave mature trees there, work around them.
Well, yeah, because they're
Their choice.
timbering them.
Their choice.
well, I'm going to speak on the mission statement of business development in the county. And, the expense of developing a piece of property in the county would be prohibitive, period.
I mean, if it's in the buffer, I mean, I've done some construction in my time, and working around trees and other things can be very expensive, but that's periphery anyway. I'm not sure how much more difficult. I mean, some circumstances it would be, in others not so much. Anyway,
Yeah.
John, that was my whole point. If we had a public hearing, and the neighbors complaining that we were taking down all these nice trees that gave them a good buffer,
Removing the
then
trees off.
we should have been able to work that situation out to where we could allow those trees to stay. What you all are saying is, we can't do that.
No, I'm saying that you would need to make it a conditional use permit in that district.
It can't be general.
And then from the carrot part of it, we could look at the landscaping standards and see if there would be a way to incentivize the preservation of trees.
Charlotte, North Carolina has some pretty good ordinances on saving trees, I will tell you that.
as far as the PCO, it would only be up against residential areas. So when you're going commercial, it's not an issue.
What I was describing before was actually any buffer, and what's interesting here, we're gonna need to look at this in comparison, both side by side. It's slightly different in the TCO, and it actually does, that's where we had the staggered in the TCO, the staggered trees, but I think that you probably just want that to be universal, not just, as we had mentioned previously, not just in a TCO.
But here's the other thing, when we speak to residential, we're talking about developed residential, correct?
No, this is properties that,
Any
so
zoning.
any, so properties, so this is the way
So
that the
if you've got the
TCO
TCO and you've got it backed up with,
to AC, RR, or R1. Any
Okay, and
property
let's say-
zoned.
and they're zoned that way, let's say it's completely wooded. We're gonna say, go ahead and put a buffer in.
Right, you're envisioning
I'm not
in
saying
the
no, I'm
future-
just saying, we're not
If you
just
plop
talking
one
about
in the middle of
development.
the woods, you're still gonna have to have a landscape buffer
Okay.
for any commercial property in the TCO. That's been in our ordinance all along.
Okay.
Someone might come in next week and put
Build
out.
a house, right?
But,
Yeah, no argument here, I just wanted to clarify.
but that's how it works.
Okay.
And
Okay, let's go ahead and strengthen that buffer requirements. Both rear and side.
And do we, is that something that we want to go back and look at our use table to change what's there today?
actually, I would, and if I may, we'd have to accomplish what I think Mr. Wagner is proposing, every use in the TCO would have to be conditional in order to get a site plan for every construction that would occur in the TCO. Because the thing is, you think that everyone should have an opportunity to review the site plan. As soon as you go to public hearing on a site plan, doesn't matter what it is, it's a conditional use. And so anything in the TCO, if you wanted every construction project to be reviewed, they would all have to go to conditional use permit. So our table would say, anything within the TCO is a conditional use permit, requiring months to.
I'm just suggesting that I think that the planning commission needs to go back through the use table and make sure that everything that we've got designated as by right or by conditional use permit is really the way we want to see it. That's all.
Yeah, and I agree, because it gets to the same issue, it's backing up to the residential, right? So we want to make sure.
And I would propose.
There's a lot of residential zoned in the TCO.
Let's move ahead.
Yeah, okay.
And with this,
Mhm.
and we will, while these plans, or while this ordinance is being reviewed by the work groups, we will look at those tables and come up, if we see a need, come up with different language, then we can do that. And at the time this comes back, we'll do exactly what we put.
Yeah, because we have a lot of reviews ahead of us.
We're in charge. Okay, anybody got anything else on the recycling? That's a big issue I have sometimes. Okay, moving on to moving on to the subdivisions. Anybody got any comments to start with? Any general comments on subdivision? Nobody else has any opinion on it?
Well, I've done it before, page 174, so if you're staff, that ought to.
Did you get,
uh,
They're all the same.
Article 15, first recommendation I had was to, Articles
the subdivisions do speak to business and, because it later goes on into the discussion of the plans that are required that you would need.
Yeah, so this is just considering land, and if someone wants to take that land and divide it up into 1 piece, 4 pieces, 10 pieces.
What that would be in each one. Before we would-
That's throughout the whole county. So your subdivision ordinance addresses any division of land.
Not
Regardless of
the
zoning.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think we need to like flip that term of subdivision in our minds for the purposes of this discussion. That we can talk about residential developments, which I think is what, when you're hearing the word subdivision, that's when I think you're thinking of residential,
Yes.
large residential developments. And for the purposes of the subdivision ordinance, this is talking about the separation of land into different pieces.
And then it gets into residential, minor,
Right. It may become.
major,
Yeah.
and it doesn't, so why we need to not specify or
It's not residential subdivision, it's land subdivision.
Yeah, and you have to have the plan requirement.
I'm sorry, but I have never read that ordinance.
I know. But the subdivision is of land.
If that's what, is that what you're
Well, it's
saying?
because the county's had so little commercial subdivision going on that it hasn't come up. But-
And that's what I was gonna say.
It-
When you're so rural, that is what you see predominantly. You do see a lot of that residential subdivision, but this will address all.
But we have,
division of
nowadays,
land.
we have to address all land subdivision, not just the residential. The reason, and I'm learning, it took me a while to figure this out. Everybody around here has had almost no exposure to subdivision. I mean, when anybody comes in this office, it was always residential, they were gonna turn it into a minor or single.
We've had a few comments.
But- Yeah, and we saw how that ended.
Right,
Again,
Subdivisions in other counties, subdivisions is.
it does.
the-
You have to, because it's talking about 2 to 4 lots. Well, most of the time, those 2 to 4 lots for a minor, for instance, are gonna be residential. Same when you have a major subdivision, but you have to have the commercial and the industrial subject to the same planning requirements as anybody else, and if you exempted them, there'd be no reason to exempt them. You have to have them submit a plat for the purpose of subdividing the property.
With that in mind, then I'll drop what I said about changing that to residential. We'll just leave it like it is as a subdivision. Next thing I had was,
You're on minor.
okay, the next thing I have, I include recommended elimination of minor residential subdivisions due to the proliferation of minor subdivisions throughout the rural areas of the county, cluttering of the roadsides, distorting the viewshed of farm fields, forestry, and historic properties, creation of additional traffic on rural roads, and adding to unsafe conditions by creating narrow residential entrances. And you all have heard me talk about that a lot, recommending some plans, but I have pretty much come to the conclusion that we have had such a proliferation of trashing of our rural countryside that I think we need to take that step to eliminate minor subdivisions.
Talk to us a little bit more about what again, I think some of this might come down to the language and we want to make sure whatever we do is reaching intent. It sounds to me like you might be talking about actually increasing the lot size requirements of the actual residential.
My
So
next recommendation was, but it has to go.
Well, I think the elimination of the minor is that the requirements for the minor are not like they are for the major. So minor subdivisions are, those are administratively approved? 2 to 4
Yes.
lots?
Yes.
Okay. And so planning commission doesn't see it, and it is a less arduous process than a major, which is 5 or more, I think, under the
Right, and there's a
ordinance.
lot of other.
So what it would do is it would
Cheaper.
just bring, everything would fall under the same requirements. We wouldn't classify it as a major subdivision because it's just a subdivision. And it would only be for residential property, but you have the same requirements that you have for a major.
And Kelly and Rebecca, if you would, I'm going to stop a very long conversation. Take this, get it written into the, you and I talked a little bit, you know what we're shooting for here as far as stopping minor subdivisions, Let's go ahead, do that, because, I'm not going to go into all the details of why that's probably not going to fly in the public sector, but I believe the planning commission should recommend what they feel is appropriate for this.
We certainly think.
And there's no, I know, and that's why I'm telling them, this is what I need y'all to do, is take that, work it out so that that language is in there. And then, as we have public hearings on this, we're gonna get the pushback from it. And, we've all discussed all the other alternatives and what developers feel, that we're stopping all their work and whatever, but just for the, I know the planning commission wants this recommendation, and I know y'all got some good language that will accomplish the goal.
Well, to make sure that I understand, because from what I'm reading here and what I'm hearing from you, it sounds almost as if we can just simply delete all of the sections on minor subdivisions, and all subdivisions are created equal, and do not go through an administrative process. They all come before the planning commission.
Other than single lot
Minor
subdivisions
subdivisions.
and family, as well as cluster.
Right.
None of those are comfortable. So
None
what
of those
we're-
come before us, they're all.
By eliminating the minor subdivisions, and I'll bring something else up next that will basically use the same requirements that we have for minor subdivisions now. So the next comment I have is.
Oh, you've actually gone past my comment, Mr. Chairman. You jumped about 4 or 5 pages. With the family subdivision, division of sale to immediate family members on page 174. So the Code of Virginia,
Code of Virginia,
no, I did not.
2244-1.
Well, I saw it, I would have brought that reference with me, but I've been preoccupied.
No, but I was wondering, because I have a copy, we may have addressed the same thing.
Yes, I don't need to. Yes, so so I did.
Yeah, that's it, we pulled the same one, so I was just trying to pass it out, if we're going to cover the same thing.
So the code allows us to limit it to property that's been owned for at least 15 consecutive years by the current owner or member of the family, and the property owner agrees to place a restrictive covenant. You can read what's been passed out to you. Any reason why we should not include that in our ordinance? Because that will cut down on someone selling to a family member who then a year later sells it to somebody else.
Right now, our current ordinance requires that the property be owned by the person for 5 years,
Uh-huh.
Right,
and that the family member that it's gifted to has to own it for 3. That's our current standard.
so the code that we just passed out, that's what I was
That allows up to
questioning.
15
Allows
years.
up to 15, and the question is whether
We
we
did
want
it
to.
5 and 3, 15, or something else in between.
I would go for the more stringent.
And it doesn't have to be 15 and 15, but it's 5 and 3 doesn't seem like a whole lot.
No, I agree.
But we made too many minor subdivisions that after 3 years, the developer took over and built 6, 7, 8 homes with inadequate roads.
And what I would add here actually is Berkeley Group kind of takes a different opinion from what some localities do. Some localities do relax that 15-year rule. We look at this and read it as You cannot really relax that across the board. You would relax it if a circumstance comes up and that person comes and applies to have that relaxed. And then you could relax for that one instance, and it would be recorded at the clerk's office.
So you were saying that it should be the 15th, that your recommendation would
Yes,
not be.
our recommendation would be, there are localities who reduce that, but I would
Okay.
I think that's a
question.
good one.
I think I know how that got reduced, but I'm not gonna go into
Let's
that.
go with your ordinance and let's
Yeah,
go with
man.
Strongly.
Make sure we have the language in there about getting a
But I do
variance.
have one question.
because
Yeah.
How, what is the means that the county has to allow somebody to relax that?
That's what I was just
It's
talking to her about,
specifically
get a
written in the
variance.
state code
Awesome.
here.
We need to put some language in there for how you get a variance to the 15 and 15 rule.
Do we really want them?
Well, that's what they,
It's stated.
all you would do is say no.
You know, if you grant a variance, it's got to be a hardship.
And that's the link, that's what we were just, whatever they normally do, we need to have that in there, because there are some hardships I can see
Sure.
that
Agree.
potentially
Yes.
happen.
Yeah.
But I also agree that 5 years or 15 years, and since I think I know a little bit of the history of how the 5 and 3 came about, like 15 makes sense.
And my next item, I think is still before your next one, on minor residential subdivisions on page 175. Number 4, cluster subdivisions, that's under minor residential subdivisions. That may be a moot point if we do away with them. I was wondering if there's a particular reason why it's there under just subdivisions.
So the same.
That is part of state code, that has to be administratively, and so that would stay as an administrative, and we would have to differentiate between that and the other.
So cluster subdivisions will become its own section,
Yeah.
basically.
But what has happened,
Right.
you all start talking about, or this starts talking about minor subdivisions. 1 and 2,
If we do away
and
with
there's minor subdivisions, and then you get
Right,
a
that's right,
4.
in cluster
That's cluster subdivision, and then 5 is minor subdivision. So you've thrown a different requirement in the middle of the minor subdivision. Why can't we just
That's
pull
what we'll
that
do.
out?
Yeah, that's what they're
and
saying,
minor
yeah.
Yeah.
subdivision? And those are different things.
Yeah.
Right,
Makes sense.
it'll be a separate heading once we kind of do away with the minor discussion.
And that's all I had for a while, so thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me.
Okay, next thing I have is the addition of a single-family residential farmstead subdivision.
What page? Your,
This is,
on your,
this is in lieu of minor subdivision.
okay.
And the EDA has talked a lot about, for one thing, the EDA is sort of business in the county. And they have talked a lot about rear farming. So how do we take advantage of that? And at the same time, help to preserve the countryside that we've got. But come up with something that would allow people to do vegetable crops, berry crops, greenhouses. We've got a couple of those in the county. But this is creating a subdivision development that would allow single-family residential with a large acreage, relatively large acreage, minimum 15 acres, and up to whatever, to be developed. What we, and particularly what the EDA would be doing, would be marketing those developments to get people that want to move to the country to be able to have a small business raising crops. I raise blueberries, I don't sell them, but I raise them.
Blueberry.
And it's an easy crop to raise. But, you know, there are so many crops. What's the guy's name?
The watermelon guy?
Huh?
The watermelon guy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's established, has a business, and I think he's got that kind of acres. But I think that's what we would like to encourage, and we could do this. And you wouldn't be able to restrict to just farm use, but we would market for that.
So if you wanted to allow something like that, you're exactly right. You wouldn't be able to, in the subdivision portion, talk about the use. It would have to be something that's generic, so it would just be allowing 15 acres and up, and you could limit the number of lots, or I've also seen localities require division restrictions, so that once it, is created into those 15 acres, or, 20 acres, or 50 acres, or whatever, then they also put division restrictions on it so that it can't be further divided.
Well, yeah, we have that in the one category that allows anything over 25 acres. We have
Yeah, exactly.
those restrictions, exempt subdivisions. Yeah, I think we could put those kinds of restrictions on it, so we wouldn't want to be subdivided.
So, you're right, you do have that,
It's in the
What
forms
we,
that you have to appear on the plat, like the 25%, has to show that on the plat.
what we could do is in our comp plan, use that language in the comp plan. That's what we're trying to do.
So I have a question, and what I wanna, because I agree and I love the concept, is what is the incentive for an owner to do that if the requirements for doing that are the same as a major subdivision?
It's
What
not.
What would the incentive be?
There's no incentive for, a major subdivision, you're gonna get 20 lots, let's say 20 lots.
Because we're doing away with the minors, so now we have this set of standards for major. And then we have a proposal that is consistent with the agricultural, community. What would be the incentive of a developer to come in and they say, well, why would I have this with these, farm, I don't care as long as the marketability is better. I'm gonna sell to the average consumer and I'm just gonna do a major subdivision. And so I like the concept, but I think if that's the case, then maybe they're the ones that aren't required to get a site plan, or they're the ones, I think there's gotta be an incentive for them to do it. And I'm not sure what it would be.
It would have to be market driven by the EDA in the county.
Right, like he was saying, that in order for those properties to, and I'm always devil advocate on this side of things.
So explain how that.
Well, the problem with the marketing of that, you've got a 100-acre site.
Yep,
You can have up to 7 lots, but they have to be 15
acres,
acres.
right, yep.
So that most developers, you're gonna have to put VDOT roads in because they have to be public streets. The cost per lot will be very high. I mean, to a point where only a few select people could even afford to buy that lot and build a house on it. Your average, you said the regular average person, and I'm telling you what I'm gonna get from the real estate, what we're gonna get from developers and real estate. Those lots could only be sold to a very high-level group of people.
Right, unless
The-
there are different requirements and different standards.
Can't get away from the expense. And yeah, we have to change
Well, I want to make
everything.
it work, so I hear the devil's advocate, and I'm with you on it, but I'm just saying I'd like to see it work.
The large lots with the VDOT roads having the front on the, as this is written, I'm doing estimates in my head right now, but it's very expensive per lot.
Let me
You know.
throw something in there.
Okay.
Hanover County has a 10-acre minimum in certain areas of agricultural areas of the county. Beaver Dam might be there in particular. They have a 10-acre minimum, that requires to be maintained. I don't know whether they require the roads to be paved, but they're built to state standards. I think they're paying into the system, but those might have sold in my pocket. No
But-
problem.
And that, I mean, I don't know that part of it. I'm just looking at if you have a 15-acre lot minimum and putting in those I'm just saying the expense per lot, you can't get, I mean, and a lot of people bought stuff in Montpelier that are, you know, that's there. But again, that's my side of it,
What-
is
what-
it's
what
going to
I
be
would-
very expensive.
What I would propose that we do with that is use the same requirements that have to be edited somewhat, the same requirements that you got for minor subdivisions. There's certain things in there that have to be edited because you're not going to have the same block system you have in a minor subdivision, if we ever did have a minor subdivision with streets.
Yeah, really, I don't run into many of them.
I'm gonna ask this question to maybe Rebecca and Ron and the group, I guess, because it's a question more than an answer, but should we consider whether the minimum lot size should be consistent to the minimum lot size in the AC district? Because right now, this is actually bar counter.
Well, that's the whole, and that's what he
That's the point
wants,
of it.
is to slow down. What we have is a lot in this county, we've had a lot of developers over the years take advantage of loopholes, I guess you could call it. And we have a proliferation of 5-acre, 3-acre, 1-acre minor subdivisions that aren't actually 4 lots, or 7 to 14 in some cases. So they're going up all over the county. So right now, AC is 5 acres. If we take 5 acres and raise that, that will reduce the number of available lots to be built on, which will stop the home, single family,
Okay.
little
got it.
clusters here and there, not wrong
But
word,
also,
clusters, so
So
it'll
this
slow
is
down.
an
the home.
additional incentive to further almost increase that above and beyond what's currently proposed. So
Yes,
This is our carrot.
it also.
Oh, no, this is an effort to slow down or stop small subdivisions,
And but the
residential
15,
subdivisions.
but the carrot to this is that we're allowing some additional flexibility in the subdivision process.
Well,
That's
yes.
No.
what he's suggesting,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's saying, because he's recommending, or the planning commission recommending, whether it goes or not, the elimination of the minor subdivisions. But instead kind of replace those requirements with this, which are less onerous.
Right.
And it would still be administrative.
Wouldn't have been a public hearing, but it doesn't reduce the,
No, I understand.
yeah, it doesn't reduce any of the requirements. It really results in just more expensive lots and less of them.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe there are people that would want that, I don't know.
There are people, I mean, but those people made a lot more money.
We could.
Maybe. Yeah.
Not having taken into the state system, but still be.
Okay.
Standard,
Is
except for.
that
That's,
clear?
again, that's one of those, let's just go ahead and put that together.
Okay.
One other thing that I would recommend, that would be, I think, most of the public in this county would like. I would recommend that the house sites be a minimum of 300 feet off of the primary or secondary road of their property. And that helps to preserve that view shield and gives you a little more feel for what it used to be like and what you see in some areas of the county where, like Janie's house, sits 300 or 400 feet off the road.
Okay, so that element would be something that we would need to add in your dimensional standards under your
Right.
AC.
Yeah, I haven't quite finished that.
And you said how many feet?
Minimum of 300 feet.
So you would like the house to be set back 300 feet. So that would be a change from, so that would be an increase from 100 feet to 300 feet.
I thought we
Yeah,
talked
I
about
put
that.
100 in there first, but after thinking about it, I'd rather go to the
In the lot,
And
in one
Stephen
of
and
our
I-
previous meetings?
Stephen-
No, 100 feet was a change, it was in your draft, so that's why you were thinking 100 feet.
Stephen and I were just talking,
They want to increase their original recommendation to 300 from 100. Well, yes. Hmm? Oh, the old draft? Or-
Enough deep enough to put the.
This is the setback table.
with lot and everything,
Yeah, I just don't have it.
there's a lot, 15 acres.
Ah, well, just so 300 feet in there.
But
It's not.
No, it's for you.
Yeah.
Oh, she's
Oh,
saying
we've
for
got,
the AC
you and
district.
the three of us are going to have a lot of notes.
Yeah, so that's, right, so this is page 58.
This is page 58,
Is
is
you're
where
on
the
the table.
standards are
Yeah.
currently in zoning ordinance 58. And it provides the table for the setbacks for the different zoning districts. So the minimum setback from a primary road for AC currently is 100. For the RR, it's 75, for the R1, it's 75.
have that?
Yeah. And then secondary road is a little bit lesser. AC 75, RR 50, 40, and then it goes up for the industrial and for the commercial. So, John, which one are you recommending?
I'm recommending 300.
300
It's
for
not in the
AC
table,
from the
but
primary
we have
road
to put
was the
it
change that I just.
Ah, okay.
Category.
In
in the
A.
category on the table to do
And RR as well?
Well,
Should
that's what-
we-
that. No, I would not have these to be independent, but it's,
I see, okay.
So the thing to consider in that your minimum lot depth is 500 feet. So if you have a lot that's 500 feet and you're asking them to set it back to 300 feet,
we would have to have another category. And put the minimum lot depth. If you're looking at 15 acres, it's about,
Well, this is set back to the main roads, unless there's a road both ends of the property, you can still do that.
this would be off of the secondary,
Well, yeah,
not off the internal.
with secondary or primary, right, but I mean, ideally, you have a 600 or 700 foot deep lot anyway, 500 is the minimum.
Well, you could have two sides with the primary road.
In which case.
And that is a minimum lot depth of 200 feet. And I know what you're getting at there. But again, these are going to be on 15 acre lots, so.
Right, but we're scratching our heads about just, is that, I'm not familiar with your subdivision ordinance providing an exception to your
There are no,
zoning ordinance, right? So, or
no exceptions. You can ask for a
This is
variance.
additional requirements above and beyond.
Instead of having this in the table, can't you specify it in the ordinance in this particular case?
So you're not saying across the agricultural district generally, you're saying with these single-family residential farmsteads?
Just the farmstead would have.
So I'm not actually changing that table that we
Okay,
just
I'm
talked
sorry.
about. No, I
No, it
I
makes
was
sense to me,
as
too.
well. I was
Okay.
just,
Okay.
that's where I immediately went. I thought that this was across the district.
Just
We
make
might
it-
actually need to consult with Darren on that one.
yeah, that's
Um,
The other thing.
We can make it a performance standard for the farmstead residential subdivision, I believe. But
The other
look
thing-
into that and just figure it out.
The other thing that we could do is not require the streets to be, require the streets to be built state standards and not take them.
Well, that, I think you might really want to consider that one because taking them into the state system even adds more expense for a lot. Looking at,
That means.
you got some long roads. No? Yeah, less calls to us. But we'll also have to have the road maintenance requirements instead of that. It would be very similar.
And you could do the same, I mean, you take that out of major subdivision ordinance.
Okay, I think I understand, and I think I have my homework cut out for me.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, it will be.
You want me to give you a little more on that?
If you have more that you haven't,
If you got a card, if you got the email, you give that to me.
Well, are there more performance standards that you're thinking about that you'd like to see for this? I think we understand what we're talking about here based on, but if there's additional things that come to mind for performance standards, then,
Other than that, pretty much the same requirements that are in their current non-subdivision.
okay, I do have another.
I think maybe start with that and then we'll look at it.
And tweak that a little bit. Okay, anybody got, are you all good with that? Then we will go ahead and get that prepared, and that will be what workers. For their comments.
And I will have lots of them.
It's like the public hearings we were talking about. They can say what they want, but we don't have to say. Okay. John?
Nothing for 182. And that's on wordsmithing.
Have wordsmithing on 181. It's on
Can you
two,
give me the section number?
yes, 86-432, major residential subdivisions. Actually, do we just want to say major subdivisions instead of residential, if the requirements apply to all subdivisions? Under B, underground utilities, all utility lines except those in the I industrial districts. Okay. The other one is landscaping on the next page on 3. For all subdivisions in which landscaping is either proper, proposed, or required. If you say either, it's only 2, not 3. But I also don't know that we like the word proper. What, do you all have recommendations about the use of the word proper?
I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
I know that there's concern about the idea of cash proffers, but there is no prohibition on
I just
proffering
know.
additional landscaping.
Okay. I always, every time I speak to a jurisdiction, they say, it's not a proffer, it's not a condition, it's a voluntary.
It has to be, I can't.
Well, okay, so we
I
can,
understand. That's
it's
why I was-
voluntarily proffered, we can say that.
So I would just take out the word either,
Yes.
or is voluntarily proffered, proposed.
Well, yeah,
Or
we
will
might
they
need
get
to
required?
change that a little bit.
And the county has eliminated cash proffers for residential.
Right.
But this is related to
It's just
landscaping.
terminology. Oh. Yeah, I just,
Yeah.
the word is kind of going out of vogue.
Change it to something else, or?
Well,
I like
it's
the
just,
word proper.
I mean, if y'all are okay with it, then just keep it in there and take out the word either.
Yeah.
Voluntary.
That's fine.
As long as
That's it.
we can't mention it.
Right.
What's your next comment?
So we
Say
don't
where
get
is it?
hurt.
Don't send anybody to my office at 11:30 tomorrow.
That's what I said.
Stick, never mind.
Are you kidding me? Oh, come on.
Yes,
So why don't you share with the group?
I'll let them roll
On
with
page,
it.
yeah, you got the last one. On page 182, number 4, we have A, interior pedestrian path. And I looked everywhere and didn't see a B.
Yeah,
So what is the A for?
drop the A. Then I also wonder, is this a duplicative provision of the one before? It's just we keep talking about pedestrian paths.
Yeah.
I've just never seen so much verbiage in my life. I feel like it's just, okay, yay.
That was a big thing back in the day with Casey and,
We
just had
had
gun
talked,
race.
yeah, we had talked the first time we went through this
Oh, okay.
about pedestrian paths
Yeah.
versus sidewalks. And at that time, we agreed to use pedestrian paths and not use sidewalks.
Right.
The requirements are pretty much the same.
Yeah, it just talks
Yeah.
about how all subdivisions in the R1
Yes.
and R1 districts, pedestrian paths shall be provided with required buffer. And then it says, for all subdivisions developed in the R1, residential pedestrian paths shall be provided within the development.
I think one is talking about maybe along the edge of the public road and one's within the development, but we'll look at that.
Right.
Yeah.
Compare and see if
Yeah.
there's differences and see if that can be,
Yeah.
Consolidated.
yes.
And then, oh, there's also a for, okay, you got that,
No,
okay,
I don't.
yeah,
I'm got the five.
okay.
And if you also, if you think for number 5A for streets, 182, we've got a shall in May, maybe I just missed something, but so every lot in a major subdivision shall abut a new or existing public street. I thought it was all May.
There was, it's
Yeah.
this third sentence, major subdivisions with 12 or more may require 2 points.
Well, I had some comments on that. 12 or more lots, we're only talking about 9 and 12 is, what, 96 vehicles a day. And you put that between 2 lots, you got 40 vehicles a day. It really should be governed by
I guess as you took this right out of the code.
the traffic impact analysis rather than decide.
If we have May, I would like some explanation as to when it would or would not.
VDOT requirements on some of these, on their road frontage, or road requirements, they do make some allowances for one entrance and one exit, as opposed to the having to have two. Most of the time, you have to have two in and out. But I do know
Why would you have to?
VDOT requirement, they want through streets. I was just looking at a site plan not too long ago, and one of their comments was, you only have one.
Generally, VDOT doesn't require 2 entrances unless your traffic count is pretty well. But,
Well, it's kind of like their turnaround, you know how they require that turnaround on the cul-de-sac, even if you
well,
don't
yeah,
continue?
I mean, that's,
But I know it's really, you
you
know,
got to tell them subdivision with 11 lots in it. You have one street in with a cul-de-sac.
yeah.
That's
Well, I know
11
that,
lots, 12 lots. It's not a.
but this says
not-
more than 12. This says more than 12 lots.
Well, it says more than 12 lots, but what I'm saying is it should be based on the traffic impact analysis.
I don't know if they still, all I know is what VDOT says, they look at it and say, no, you got
VDOT
it.
isn't doing traffic impact analysis, we're in big trouble.
So how about to clarify that may, that we say, if determined by, you know, if
As
required.
determined by
Yeah.
VDOT.
I was looking at the exact language.
Oh, sorry.
And I would say also VDOT, sometimes it's VDOT, and sometimes it's spelled out.
You know, I would do away with that sentence, subdivisions, I don't think it means much.
Where are you?
5A, is that, are we still talking about the same? Like 6A, excuse me.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I just realized I was on 6.
We can look at that. We'll look at that and provide a recommendation in the next draft.
Yeah. On the 86, we'll go to 2 major residential subdivisions, 5 first one, I provided vehicular access to such a lot by means of the new subdivision road, separated from the highway by a landing strip at least 30 feet in width. That's in conflict with this property line. And I don't know how we deal with that really, but
Eliminated here, because it's covered under landscape requirements.
what you're talking about is a frontage road, basically. With a buffer between the frontage road and the main road.
That might be irrelevant.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, so you're in G, correct?
Yes.
And we talk about lots fronting such a subdivision, and aside from the US highway versus state primary, on the page 185, M, no residential lot shall be platted in a major subdivision which has primary frontage on the US highway 30 or 360. So is that in conflict with the fronting?
Well, what they're talking about there is a frontage road.
Not one of the primaries.
Okay, so the residential lots abutting or fronting, aren't they talking about fronting on 360 or 30?
You can't have frontage.
Right.
What
But
they're
it's not
talking
saying,
about is rather than having a bunch of entrances onto the road, you put frontage road in there.
but it talks about the residential lots abutting or fronting on such thoroughfare.
Right. You-
Which
you're
one are
having
you
residential
on?
lots that
I'm
are
on
abutting the road. You could either have reverse frontage on a parallel street setback the
Right.
lot west, or you can have a frontage road parallel to the state main road, to the primary or secondary road. I think this talks about primary.
But it wouldn't be fronting, it'd be,
Parallel.
it's facing into the subdivision, so that the owner, the person living there pulls into a subdivision street before then getting onto 360 or 30, so.
So what it's saying is
Pink
you
service
don't, you
roads.
don't want entrances for every lot going onto the, directly onto primary road.
But your
So
point,
the way
Mr.
you accomplish that is.
But in M, it says no
Right.
residential lot shall be platted which has primary frontage, so on page 185.
Yeah, on that one, that's 360 or 30. So we would not plat an entrance onto 30 or 360 period. It just won't happen.
So what roads is G talking about?
G is talking about other roads like River Road, or if you build a subdivision road parallel to the primary road, like a service road, that's one of the requirements for the major subdivision. You have one entrance coming off 30 to 360 onto subdivision street.
Right.
You have a cross street that you have to have, I've been reviewing these here lately, that's where all your entrances in from, that's your frontage for the driveways of the houses. So it pulls it off of 30 or 360. That other one that you were talking about, 5G with the 30-foot strip, basically that's the median. It makes sure that that's as close as you get to the major highway, 30 or 360.
What it does is ensure that you don't have any entrances going into the major highway.
Right. That median kind of concept. But they said the conflict wouldn't be, you can't have them going directly on the 30 or 360.
Okay, and this is the wordsmithing, a US highway or state primary highway in G. And then M, we talk about US highway 360 or state highway 30. We should be consistent in our usage, I should.
Right, and the only comment I have on that is that reference to the US highway, primary highway, there's only two in the county,
I'll wait.
360 and 30, and so that's redundant right there. We won't, we can never have that
Federal
situation,
designation, state designation.
I agree, but it's,
because we prohibit that.
it's safety roads.
So you want to just list what you have?
I see the reduction in traffic where subdivision joins are contained to US highway or state primary highway. US highways in this town are 30 and 360.
And you want those specifically articulated.
I would say be consistent.
Either way, I would prefer US primary highway, but that's just me.
I would ask consistency throughout, and
Yeah.
then however you want to do it's fine with me.
But
On both US primary.
which number were you looking at?
30 and 360 throughout the entire ordinance, we should refer to them the same way. 30 and 360. You can call them both state primary, you can call one federal and another state, but be consistent throughout the whole ordinance. I'm sorry, I had a peek of mine, so I apologize.
No, that's good. Those are the things that same way.
I am too, but
I tend to look at it and just gloss over and look at, you know, the meat of it. So those types of things are good.
Okay, I had a question on page 186, but,
I have something before
I
that,
think, I want,
if you don't mind.
go ahead.
Just on page 184, which is right before 6 of lots, sidewalks needs to be italicized. And you'll see, and that is consistent throughout, as is a justification, sometimes it's justified, sometimes it's not.
okay.
And then also you see, just an example, Virginia Department of Transportation,
Yeah.
and we define it here on page 184
Yeah.
as VDOT.
The first place.
Right.
No.
Right.
The other question, we talked about corridors between sidewalks and paths, and we had agreed before, paths to be consistent.
Yes.
So if we're gonna call it paths, if that's what we're doing. then
Pedestrian.
change that to paths.
Change sidewalks to pedestrian paths. Or, whatever you
Let's see.
and carry that through that definition.
Can, for clarification purposes for us, is that because you're considering that you would consider a path that's not paved to be a sidewalk?
Yes,
Well,
absolutely. Mixed use trail.
the other,
Well, in my mind, a mixed-use trail, it would be an asphalt
Yeah,
trail,
because
not
where
a
we have-
concrete trail. But a
And-
pedestrian path could be argued to be an unpaved area.
And actually, when we were talking about this originally,
Mhm.
and it was cinder-type paths, multiple.
Right, because you want to make sure that whatever you're doing meets ADA accessibility, and so I would have a little bit of concern if we're not being,
My problem with concrete sidewalks and ADA, they're only compliant for the first year and a half. Because after that, they beat up every which way. But
I've seen.
we did consciously decide that the concrete sidewalk wasn't.
Well, ADA, they don't care whether it's concrete or whether it is, I mean, I'm sure there are other materials that are
Right.
similar.
you can use an asphalt, because there are other surfacing, but I think my question was if we're talking about unsurfaced or surface.
Okay.
Right. I don't think we would do anything that would not be ADA compliant or
So
prevented.
maybe add that as
Okay,
a.
under pedestrian paths on page 182, that specifies the paths shall be constructed of permanent materials such as concrete, asphalt, brick pavers, or materials which are similar, which would be the same thing which again would be used for sidewalks. So in all cases, it would be that. question about page 186, 7D, commercial industrial blocks. I guess that's what you were talking about. This is subdivision, we're talking about subdivisions, and they also include commercial and industrial.
You skip flag lots.
The only question I have there, is commercial and industrial would be B2 or I. You've got a major subdivision, it would be R. I didn't see that was in there.
You skipped your comment on the flag lots. To eliminate flag lots? Flag lots should only be permitted in major
Yeah, I
subdivisions.
just said eliminate flag lots, we talked about flag lots before, that language, something about. What page is that on?
It's on page
184
E.
at the bottom, 6E.
Flag lots shall only be permitted in major subdivisions where safety or environmental factors can prevent the utilization of normal lots, and that use improves the quality of design of the subdivision. I thought we talked before about trying to eliminate by our approval, by our review and approval, trying to eliminate any need for flag lots. So we talked before.
We
about
did,
eliminating-
so what happened was we eliminated flag lots from minor subdivisions completely.
Yeah, I thought-
And we talked about it, and it is in here, and we've discussed it, and I don't know if the thought was it was a placeholder, but I'm with you on removing the flag lots.
If we got rid of minor subdivisions, it wouldn't be there anyway, would it?
Well, this is-
Oh,
It said this
just
is
the
in the
subdivision
remaining,
now.
this is in, because, yeah,
Get rid of it.
it was particularly important in the minor because the planning commission's not seeing it.
And you have so few lots to begin with, that if you're flagging one of them, you're.
Right. And,
Eliminating the need for providing
right.
proper roads or.
Right.
Right. I agree. The other thing is, if it ended up staying in, I don't like the fact that we're saying that, then it's limited to 1 per 5. Because to me, that's just a proliferation of flag lots. I mean, you can't have the safety need that's so great that you would need 1 per 5. So to me, that would have to go, and it would be a more stringent
I'm-
requirement.
Oh, get rid of flag lots in major subdivisions. Again, that's not much of an issue to me.
Oh, perfect.
So when it's-
Huh? It's just, I don't like flag lots to begin with, except in minor subdivisions. I want them all to be flag lots, so that I only have one entrance going onto it, right?
But we're requiring that, and,
Well, we don't have it in mind, if
yeah,
we take out minor,
Yeah,
that's an issue.
yes,
We've got-
And in major subdivisions, there's,
You
if
can't.
I'm designing one in my head going, I would not want any flag lots in my major subdivision.
no,
For
true,
safety.
okay, well, that makes sense then.
Hmm?
We're eliminating it, yeah.
I believe so, yes, sir.
Good. Okay, anybody got anything else on?
I had something on 187,
Okay.
if nobody has anything before that. Okay. Construction plans, this is on 187, number 13, that should not be italicized. And then we say he, I'm okay with the use of pronouns, but I think we should say just for change it to, instead of if he say,
You know, I went through this
Subdivider.
thing with a fine tooth comb and I missed that
Missed
one.
that.
yeah, just say
Rebecca never saw the
subdivider.
ones that were E and G. That's when I missed. Yeah, before I sent it over to y'all.
Yeah, I didn't see any others.
No, I went through this whole document of
Yeah,
taking care, getting rid of et cetera, getting rid of pronouns,
You did a great job.
and a bunch of capitalizations. I did a lot of them.
Sure you're.
Before I sent, well, I didn't want to pay them to
I know,
do
I
that.
I'm sorry that I came to you with those issues, that's not the goal.
Yeah, I
Now,
can't-
see, now I've won.
Now you just,
Now I
you
want
just
to go
made it more
through
difficult for
But
them
I
to help you
sorry.
do search.
No, they,
So where, I'm a little lost, where is the he? I didn't see that. I
Okay,
was still
so-
looking at construction plans.
13, state law reference, plat details, right here on 13, construction.
So where's the?
So the he is, if he has not previously. done so.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And I feel really bad for missing that.
Yeah, this is under the minor, this is a long section, major subdivisions. Under, are y'all not seeing it?
She does.
Well, we were at it and then she moved her screen. So now we gotta find it again.
It's under construction plans, section 13, under major subdivision. And it's R187, but I don't know. And then don't italicize the caption.
Thank you.
Like I said, I tried to get all of those.
Great.
On page 187, 11A. So properly designed water system, is that water supply and wastewater treatment? Either or both?
What B addresses wastewater. A addresses water and B represents waste.
So A is water supply.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, under any.
Does that make sense?
Okay, water supply system, okay. Again, I've not looked at this in a while, so I
On
apologize.
A, state law requires that you have central water system with 25 or more lots. You can see on the septic.
I'm totally good again, I've been out of touch for a while, I apologize.
You haven't been on it forever.
Gosh, what are you talking about?
Okay, so page 188, since we're talking about et cetera.
Where is it?
F.
13 now.
You know how many times I type and the like? One whole afternoon, I just typed and the like. Miss Rose does not
I
like
do
et
it,
cetera.
this is just my life every day, I do it all the time.
And she
Oh.
prefers and the like.
So did we
So-
find an et cetera? We were conversing.
Which one?
Yeah, 13F.
Oh, and that's an
Oh, and
easy one.
13E as well.
Those I should have got both of them.
Yeah, yeah, there's plenty.
Yeah, I probably when I was doing my word searches and stuff, would leave out a period or something and I'd catch them.
Maybe that's what it was.
or the fact that I was up to page 180
Exactly.
looking for
You were
this
just,
thing.
you were just excited about being finished.
No, I love when you search and it tells you there's
Yeah.
217 and you're like, oh no.
One,
And I don't-
one thing we're gonna need to do, we're gonna use these same provisions for the new subdivision, the minor subdivision ordinance. Looking at the minor subdivisions, minor subdivisions are 2 to 4 lots. If you've got 2 lots, you can't have, you can't have state maintenance with only 2 lots. So, what I would propose there is that you require a common driveway for the 2 lots, so we can put up one entrance onto the existing secondary road.
Performance standard for single lot subdivision.
Is that not already one of the performance
So
standards?
a shared entrance.
I don't think so, not for 2 lots.
Well, single lot subdivision.
Single lot subdivisions, gotta have one entrance anyway.
Yeah, but the subdivision creates 2 lots, that's where the
That's where-
requirement kicks in.
Yes.
So don't we have a requirement that there be,
No, the requirement right now would be 300 feet on the road for both lots. You'd have 2 driveways coming down the road. He's saying require a single driveway for that single lot subdivision.
But if you've got a 2 lot minor subdivision.
Farm subdivision. It would be a farm subdivision.
there is
Farmstead.
no, there is no.
We've got rid of minors.
But still,
If you had
if
3,
we're trying to limit the number of driveways, so it would require 50-foot easement for.
right, that's what I was saying, shared driveway.
Would that be?
There is a section on single lot subdivisions, and I don't know if it's under there or not, I don't remember where that's.
It's not,
Okay. That's where it would go, right?
yes.
Okay.
You're gonna be getting a lot of calls on those. I'm not disagreeing, it's just. You'll be getting calls.
Limits flexibility for the site design.
Oh, interesting. It does.
Okay, anybody got anything else?
What page are you on?
I have draft, my electronic was mentioned, my paper.
I just have a quick question on page 189, since we're talking subdivisions and not residential, just subdivisions in general. I want to make sure that under number 17, when we're talking about the performance guarantees, that we've covered everything that we need to as far as timeframes and
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at it for ages either, but I
Okay.
remember looking at that part going, I'm good with that.
okay, I just want to make sure that we were sure that that's.
Yeah, I mean, and most of that standard requirements for releasing, it's about releasing bonds and all of that stuff.
A
It's-
lot of that is just state
yeah,
code and
yeah.
you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah.
So there's a 16A but no B. So if you take the A out.
Okay, yeah.
Which section are you referring to?
Oh, so
Skipping around, making sure I get everything.
A,
Under,
certification upon completion of improvements,
And
and
then
it's
another
under
B.
major
okay,
subdivisions,
okay,
which,
plat requirement.
it says major subdivisions. Now, we shouldn't say major, it's either we're gonna say everything is a major subdivision, or we're just gonna call it subdivision.
Yeah, it's a subdivision.
It's just subdivisions, and then the exemptions would be like the family, the cluster. I don't know where the PUD falls. writing 1 through 10, when you're writing 1 through 10, 2, 3, 4, you write it out. Any reference to a number above 10, you do the numerics. And we just switch, and that may be something that Ron can fix, but we're inconsistent.
No, we'll fix it.
And the exception would be when you're starting a sentence, you don't say 11, numeric 11, you
Yeah.
say 11. So. The other thing, the mathematical. No, it's exactly the same.
No, and I'm sorry that it's, that happened.
Well, it's something else's fault. It's fine. Okay. I'm a nitpicker.
Me too, it's my downfall, but I'm new to the project, so.
But here's, what I want to do is be able to walk away,
Totally.
not go, ah,
Yeah,
when I see it in there.
yeah. There'll be
Yeah.
something, I guarantee,
I know,
because there
I
always
know.
is, but.
I just have to cut myself back.
Okay, are we through, or we still looking?
No, I'm done.
One thing, we have one Article 20 floods that we didn't include in this. John has done 2014, 2015, the ordinance for floods.
I don't remember.
Well, it wasn't in our package,
Oh, okay.
but it was online,
Right.
so I printed it out, and I'm just wondering if there's any reason it wasn't included.
Are we done with subdivision? Are we all done on subdivision?
I am.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just, there's another, Ron? Yes, sir. We have a section in our ordinance, our zoning ordinance on floods. Current ordinance.
The floodplains or?
Floods.
Oh.
Article 20, floods, and this was
In the subdivision one?
enacted and ordained on the 27th day of April 2015. We did that.
Y'all did that, okay, so y'all tell me about it.
Are we for them or against them?
Well, I think when the board did this in 2015, I think it was because we had some problems. I think that was right after the,
All those people's
It
bodies.
wouldn't be under the zoning or the subdivision,
Yeah,
right?
that's the other part of the ordinance, not
You
under
said,
subdivision.
Chairman Wagner
Zoning.
saying it is.
It's under zoning?
There is no Article 20.
it's Article 20,
It's not on Muni Code. That's why I've
86-9.
never seen it.
Oh, and that's where we would have pulled everything from.
That's where all mine comes from.
Well,
Can I say real quick?
I hope you got it in.
Can I get your
I think it looked like it was
Would you
important
like
enough
us
to
to
be-
keep this
Board.
certification?
Ron,
Sure.
there's no Article.
Yeah, I'd like if we're gonna
Isn't
have to
this
title
when they
something,
put all the new FEMA stuff?
the title, is that what you're asking?
Yes, so,
I don't know whether it was at that time or not, that's what I do remember, and I think Steve
That up
remembered
there.
too, it was right after we
so
had.
that's how we
make
look
it
into
switch.
it, so it's, we've got certification.
Trying to get us to beat us.
Yeah.
And then we've got the full,
Yeah, and I don't care whether you drop it down or whether you keep it consistent, just
I
as long
think
as
our
it's
our
consistent.
formatting person probably put
Keeps
in
it in.
A, just wasn't worried about A versus B.
The lighting in there, like, dealing on the zoning now.
It should be in the Muni Code if it was 2015.
Just making sure that we
Well,
don't
it was never submitted.
believe that it reason this.
I think-
Management section.
Yeah, it may have been moved over to the floodplain management section.
I pulled it up in our
Was
subdivision.
that one?
Yeah, well, I'm saying,
This-
so it's,
Okay, so you pulled it from
We
Muni.
don't, there is no Article 20, it only goes to 18.
I don't think it's in the subdivision ordinance anymore.
I
I
think
think
it's,
it's been put in its own section because it's referencing a lot of building stuff.
yeah, I think it got moved out of zoning.
Well, it's also, we were saying subdivision, but it would have been zoning at the time, I guess.
Well, it's got a zoning, huh? 86-900.
And I'll check on
It's
that.
gonna be under floodplain management.
That's what I'm thinking too. It had to be part of FEMA when they put it under floodplain management. 'Cause,
They've made changes since 2015.
yeah, they made the major
If we're
changes.
done with that, before we adjourn, I've got a couple of things.
Take it out, then.
Are we done with, y'all did all planning in the beginning up front? Awesome.
The only thing I would like to change is we have a minimum of 6 copies. We're gonna need to add that to 7 now because of the health department. And it's actually under the single lot, and it's gonna be the minor, well, we're not minor anymore, but it will be under the major as well. Change that from 6 to 7.
Yes, because now the health department wants a copy of all our plats.
Well, you are gonna have it under the new designation of the farming.
Yeah, 7 is just the number we have to have now for any plat. All plats submitted past 3
Septic fields and all that stuff, secondary.
primary and secondary,
Yeah.
even boundary line adjustments.
Okay, if we're done with that, I got a couple of things. What I would like to consider is a resolution to request the board, and you listen to this closely, Stephen, to request the board to agree not to accept applications for solar farms for a period not to exceed 6 months, to allow a comprehensive review of impacts on farmers and our agricultural and forestry lands. What do you think about that?
Either that or till after the comprehensive plan is revised and we've identified solar farms as something we want to have in the community, I'd be fine with either of those.
What I would like to do is get ahead of the study,
Who would do the study?
and allow, and get the board to go ahead and advise the planning staff to not to accept anymore solar collapse until that study is complete.
So if they adopt a resolution and
They
we've
would.
got an ordinance that provides and permits for it, the board action is sufficient.
Yes, I understand it is, yes.
Okay. Well, then I support
Any
it.
problem with that?
Because we said we're not paying for a study, that's one of the reasons why we didn't do it last time.
No, I'm talking about an in-house study.
Oh, yeah, that'd be fine, yeah.
What the in-house study do exactly?
What would study do? It would look at, for one thing, look at the issues that came up during this past fiasco. Look at those issues and other issues within the county. How does this affect our farmland? What are the limitations on it? Can we impose limitations? How it impacts farmers, neighbors?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, and again, I was once ambivalent about solar farms, I no longer am. The ordinance, again, my reason for recommending the things I recommended was to take out some of the potential conflict between the neighbors and those who want to create solar farms. So I think we need to either tighten the resolution or,
Resolution.
excuse me, tighten the ordinance.
That's
I
the whole
mean,
purpose to see.
So
how we should do
one of the things in the ordinance we talk about identifying any other solar farms within 4 miles, I would say don't allow them within 5 miles or 10 miles of another solar farm. And again, I'm not sure what the study would do
that.
beyond.
So that's one of the things that I would want to look at. Do we put some kind of control over the number?
But I'm not sure how, and I've got great confidence in staff, but I'm not sure what they would be doing exactly, other than, I think we as a commission ought to have additional recommendations to
That's what I'm looking for, is to have a study with, I was looking at you and actually get the study, but what I would look at is some farmers, some citizens, opposition, to sit down and meet once a month to discuss, to look at and discuss all the areas that there are conflicts in, and come up with recommendations for changes in the ordinance. So,
Rather than going to the Board of Supervisors, I would recommend that you as the chairman do what you're allowed to do, which is to set the subcommittee. And then,
No, well, it would be a subcommittee that I would set up a subcommittee. But what I'm asking is that the board direct I think the board has to do this. I don't think I've got the authority, or we have the authority to say we're not going to accept them.
While that process is.
a wild process.
How that process is going on. So what I want the board to do is tell the planning office that they're not accepting more applications for at least 6 months or for a period of no longer than 6 months.
I would have no problems at all with that. So you would establish a subcommittee,
Yes.
and some members of the planning commission with the support of staff and the involvement of the citizenry. And I think we have a fair number of the citizenry, both for and against solar farms, that we would be able to have a good
I would want
discussion.
Catherine Stanley on
Yes, no question.
Oh, by the way, she's going to be on the work group for this. She's accepted the invitation.
I'm reluctant to have the existing ordinance make it clear that we're welcoming additional ones when in fact we're not sure we are. And for that reason, I would be very comfortable with the board of supervisors doing that while we study it, while we revise the ordinance, while we revise the comp plan, to not have staff spend a lot of time accepting additional applications. Because again, it sends the wrong message to developers who spend sometimes millions of dollars with the anticipation of coming here because they think that we want lots of solar farms. That would be a good signal to developers that you might want to look elsewhere for now until we determine what the citizenry want. So I mean, I'm comfortable with that idea. But there's 3 other commissioners and staff who will weigh in as well.
Well, staff recommends.
That's our decision.
No, but I welcome his input. Pluses or minuses.
Yeah, of course, if the Board of Supervisors tells us not to take, we won't. We do have some questions about that sort of resolution actually being an ordinance change and not open to public hearing. That's the only thing we were just, obviously, I don't want any applications.
I would present the ordinance next.
So, and another.
No, I mean, not for the recommendation of the planning commission, I'm worried about the board going, because what you're asking is, by ordinance, county code, someone is allowed to submit an application.
Well,
If we make a resolution saying that we're not to take any, that's rewriting the ordinance. And that's where I'm, but that's y'all's recommendation.
I am told by the code we can do that for 11 months.
Can do, so all we have to do
Yeah,
is
call
put
Andrew,
up-
I mean, definitely, I
I
would.
don't know if we want to make a resolution, but we could just say we're withdrawing the ordinance for right now.
right, exactly. Well, you have to have a public
We're
hearing
not,
for that.
we're not.
That's exactly what
talking about
you
it.
do.
We're just not accepting the
Right.
application.
Just, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not the proper way to do it.
And you need to have a public hearing by the March meeting to pull the ordinance out entirely, make sure the citizens will realize it's only until we've had a chance to study it, and that's
Because
where
what we had assumed
So
was
it
it
helps
was
with the
gonna
same
take
thing.
all the conditions that were in this last one, like I said, that hadn't been done yet. So maybe we can, like you said, until that is done, we can.
Because we've been dodging
Right,
it.
yeah, so, yeah.
We
We'll
really-
find out the
Yeah,
right way to do
okay.
it from Andy.
A lot of people are waiting for this guy to pull it.
I think so,
Yeah,
make a
yeah,
resolution.
yeah, of course.
and that's the reason to either do what
That's
Mr.
right.
Wagner suggested, or remove it from the ordinance, one or the other.
Yeah, we can, and get the code, but basically it should be close to this after our work sessions and everything, to get all this finished.
We're still months away from presenting it for
Like you
revision.
said, 6 months, yeah, so
Yeah.
say, I don't know, like, say.
And the reality is-
We could just say until.
All solar farms are still under
Yeah, I don't-
conditional use permit.
I I don't
Right,
have a problem
right,
with the
it's
time
gonna-
limit, but I don't wanna limit us if state code allows us up to 11 months, and that's, and we don't know how long it's gonna take us to get our revised
Oh.
ordinance out there and
And as long as
approved.
it's not more than.
Exactly, I
Okay,
just
yeah.
don't wanna limit us too short, I just wanna make sure that we have time to get this draft of the ordinance out, do our public hearings, and get something approved with whatever that language is gonna be.
Yeah, I like what he's put too, I think we shouldn't allow them anything under 21 either, that way this county gets something. The one that they squeezed in the Sweet Sue is,
No,
you didn't get anything. Oh,
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, so Mr. Hatter, between the planning commission recommending that the solar portion of the ordinance be removed pending the revision of the entire
Not
ordinance.
recommended.
Well, no, either that, no,
We do not accept that.
all right, but between that choice of recommending the board remove it from the ordinance at their March meeting or whatever, or a resolution, whichever.
well, I like Mr. Wagner's idea, and of course, I don't know the legal part of it, but what he's saying is, the planning commission should recommend to the board of supervisors that we not accept any more large-scale utility solar facility applications. That the planning department will not accept any applications for whatever period of time we're allowed. Great idea, because that way I don't have to worry about permitting anything and we can work on that.
With the exception of the last sentence where you say you wouldn't have to worry, everything before that, I would make a motion that we do just that.
That,
You.
I'm making a motion to send that resolution to the Board of Supervisors, just as you suggested and Mr. Hatter described.
I second it.
I mean, then the work sessions, that's the problem we're having in our work sessions.
It's a recommendation. It's a public meeting.
Right.
It's being recorded.
Yeah.
Ms. Cole, to call the roll on
Ms. Janie Rhodes,
Aye.
Ms. Bonnie Hay,
Aye.
Mr. Stephen Greenwood,
Aye.
Mr. John Breeden,
Aye.
and Chairman Don Wagner.
aye.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll get this resolution drafted up as a recommendation, and if you would like, I can try to get it on the agenda for the next meeting to present the.
Send me a copy of it.
But yeah, I want board, but if that's where y'all want to go, I'll try to get it onto the agenda as quickly as possible. Go ahead. We'll get that written up tomorrow, get it emailed out to the board, or to the commission, and then our next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors, yeah, we'll have plenty of
Well, our
time.
next regular meeting is the,
Yeah, so I'll get it.
We have a work session before that.
We've got.
I might have to get permission from the chairman of the Board of Supervisors and see if I can work with him.
March 9th.
Hard to work with.
So, but yeah, and get that resolution before them. If that's my direction, is that what you want?
okay.
Yeah, so our next meeting is March 12th, I think.
Oh, because we
Yeah,
can.
Thursday.
Tough times, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A couple other things, I'd like to go ahead and, John, would you be interested in John?
I would certainly be interested in serving on it. If you don't have another chair, I'd be willing to serve as the chair as well. Well, I currently have some severe personal restrictions on my time. A couple of weeks ago, I thought I might lose my mother-in-law. At this point, we may be having to come home in a couple of weeks. So I may be in a position to chair it, I may not. So I'd definitely be willing to serve on it.
At least I'd like for you to be a member.
Okay.
You probably have got more experience in solar farms than I do.
Having worked for a utility, I probably would be.
So I will contact some people, probably Charlie. And,
I would definitely be willing to serve on it and probably would be able to chair as well if you like.
and, okay. Then we'll move ahead with that as the next we'll make that official at the November meeting. One other committee I would like to establish is a committee to update the forms for zoning actions, and what I would like to do is get a committee, mostly within this, but perhaps one staff person, and probably be working with the boss's secretary. What's her name?
Olivia.
Olivia.
If she's.
I think she's in the process of updating the ordinance, the applications. So I would like to update those applications in order to make them understandable to the user, make it user-friendly.
Chairman Wagner, go ahead and say what you got to say, Christie, because I know what it is.
Emily Teagle is currently working on the special projects for all of the rollout for the new website, the new county website. So I've actually already gone through, we have updated everything. Sherry and Ron and I just need to sit down on some of the basics for the conditional use permits, just the detailing on information of what it entails, what it includes, what it requires. But all of those applications as far as building, I know Steve Hudgens is currently working on those applications, but all of our planning and zoning thus far has pretty much been updated. It just hasn't been rolled out yet.
Are we online? Will they be online?
They will be, yes, sir. Once, we just have not sent the new stuff because Emily Teagle is doing the fine touches on all the new websites.
At a time when you've got those in a position where we can look at them, I would like to have copies of all those so that we can review them with the planning commission.
Before it's rolled out. Before it goes live.
Yes, yes.
That makes sense.
And lastly, I would like to have a schedule of the workshops so that any of us that choose to attend can do so.
I haven't established any of that yet.
At such time as it is established.
I would only say this, any of us that want to attend, we need to coordinate with Mr. Etter so we don't have more than are allowed.
All of us can attend. We can't discuss it.
I personally would be very reluctant.
Right, it's all, it gets, seems like that we can do it, even our board can, we just have to make sure you stay away and you do not say anything. We can't, but everybody perceives it as, oh, we all got together.
Yeah, I'm not.
Right, and you know how that is and how that's worked in the past, but yeah, as long as you stay separate, we don't talk
Perception is
together.
reality.
That's right. So, yeah, I agree with you, they should be able to at least listen and sit there,
Yeah.
but not together and not say
We
anything.
wouldn't participate, we wouldn't
Right.
answer questions, we
Right.
wouldn't ask questions, all we would do.
Exactly. Just be there.
I'm not 100% sure that will be feasible.
It will.
No, it is.
It shall be feasible.
I will keep you informed, I will.
I think you said something last time about legal, but that's not true.
I think we just can't speak, I know.
This is a planning commission.
This work group is not related to the planning
This
commission
is
at
a
all.
planning commission.
This is a staff work group.
This is a planning commission endeavor.
Well,
Planning commission.
it may be allowable. I think if multiple ones of us were at these meetings, I think it would inhibit the free flow of information we need to get from these folks, which is why I won't be there. I'm anxious to hear what they have to say, but I won't be there.
I will hear the first time, so.
But that's just me. I think we could all be there under FOIA. I don't have concerns with that. I'm also some of the FOIA expert for the last 40 years. So probably if legal would be there, I think it's probably not the best thing to do, but that's my opinion.
Okay. Anybody got anything else? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned until the 12th.
Yeah, this is a work.
We're down here, see, next to nothing.